got a guest. Man, I've been talking about boxing analyst from page2sports.com, Daniel Zaldivar. Hey, what's up, Daniel?
What's up, man? Thanks for having me on the show. Hopefully we could keep doing this every week, man, because we've been talking about it for how long, and now we at least finally got to do the first one now.
Yeah. No, I'm definitely going to put this on my podcast. For everyone that's listening, it's me again, Ed Carbajal, Page 2 Sports Mixed Martial Arts Analyst for page2sports.com. You can follow me on Twitter at Carbazal. And Daniel, I mentioned it a lot on the other episodes from my podcast. I mentioned how me and you are going to start our own eventually, and how you're the busiest guy in the Combat Sports channel. So why don't you let us know how your weekend went?
Well, we're just coming off the weekend off of the Cotto Canelo fight, which is probably the second biggest boxing fight, at least in the sport, of the year, right behind Mayweather-Pacquiao, of course. I was there covering it for Page 2 Sports. It was a good fight, very entertaining, a lot of passionate fans. I mean, I'm sure you know the Hispanic market in the combat sports is huge, man. It's huge. I mean, you and myself, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a great experience, man. I mean, I go to all these events, and Cotto Canelo, and it's probably the biggest one I've been to. But as I mentioned, the scores, Canelo, of course, spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't watched it, but Canelo, of course, won by unanimous decision. I thought the fight was a little closer. I do think he did pick up the win, but I thought it was a lot closer than the scorecards indicated. Because Cotto did fight well. It wasn't like he fought a bad fight. But the scorecards, I think there was like a 119, 109, 118, 110. You know, like, and it's just like, come on, man. Like, that's pretty much saying, like, if 119, 109 means that Cotto only won one round in the 12-round scheduled contest. And like, if you watch the fight, rewatch the fight. I know you mentioned that your parents watched it. It was a lot closer.
Yeah, and I don't mean that as like a diss. That when I say my parents watch it, I was working an expo here in Jersey at the Comic Expo, but my parents, when they were talking about it, actually they were talking up more the co-main event. They couldn't think of the name. They're older than us, so they couldn't think of the name. My father's a boxing fan of the house. He's the one that got me into combat sports. But who fought before the Cotto Canelo fight that seemed like a barn burner?
Oh, it was an Asian fighter named Mira and Vargas. Unknown fighters, but they were. But dude, it was probably one of the best fights I've ever seen. It ended in a knockout. But literally the whole time it could have went either way. One round, one guy was like about to go down to the floor, and then the next round it was the other guy. It was literally just going back and forth. So you literally, like, if you had a bet on that fight and you had it on one or the other, there's times where you were like, oh man, I'm about to lose. And then the next round you would have been like, oh, I'm going to win my money. But like I said, Vargas ended up pulling out the win. He got the stoppage, but literally, like, it was like 50-50. It was one of the best fights I've ever seen. And it was even better that I saw it live.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I heard it was like that. So who'd you say won?
Vargas. It was an Asian fighter named Mira, I believe, and then he fought. I believe the guy's name is Francisco Vargas. I believe it's Francisco Vargas. It is Vargas, but seriously, man, if you can catch it on YouTube or anywhere else, like I believe they're doing the replay this Saturday. Definitely check out that fight. It was probably one of the best boxing fights I've ever seen. So it was awesome. It had entertainment, knockdowns, and it was awesome, man. It was awesome.
That's definitely worth writing about, man, because the fights like that are the ones that people seem to miss out on when they want to knock boxing. I know you and I have talked about a lot about how when people bring up the Mayweather-Pacquiao and how the numbers and the money that came in didn't match what the fight actually brought. And Chris Rodriguez from Blue Collar Sports that writes for us too. Me and him are of the same opinion of how boring Mayweather kind of made boxing for some people. specifically me and him, but it's like the fights that make boxing what it is are fights like that. Fights like that one. I wish I could remember the name of that one that I messaged you for that PBC did that one Tuesday night.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot who it was, but those fights are with finishers, with guys that try to finish. And I know Canelo tried to finish too, but some people are just that good. But I just feel like the way certain fighters fight, if they don't try to finish, they could definitely put a bad taste in somebody like myself that stopped watching. Make me lose interest, which I did, obviously.
Right, right. I gotcha. But I guess we could talk about some of the stuff that's going on in your sport. I mean, I guess we should start with the biggest news. Ronda Rousey getting knocked out. I guess she's probably the most popular star.
Oh yeah, yeah.
MMA.
Well, Holly Holm is now, and you had mentioned she was there at the Canelo fight, right? In Vegas.
Yeah, she was. Yeah, man. I mean, she was guarded by security. I mean, I know she took pictures with a couple fans and stuff like that. But I mean, hey, she's a star now, man. She got the victory of her career. And which is crazy is that she used to be a boxer. She was like a multi-time boxing champion.
So, yeah, and kickboxing.
And kickboxing. That's right. Yeah. That's right.
So striking is her forte, and it was weird. I thought it was odd that Ronda Rousey wanted to try to like compete with her on that level. I wrote something on my website where I found that to be her biggest error was to try to strike with a striker, and Tito Ortiz made the same mistake with Randy Couture back in the day when he lost the UFC title to him before people were watching UFC. It's just like, you're supposed to impose your best art against your opponent, not try to compete with them and what they're obviously good at. So there was a really good analysis actually by Firas Zahabi. He actually put it up again, his own version, because he had a really good analysis with clips from the fight, and the UFC made him take it down. But he put up a really good analysis of what Holm did, which was pretty much just avoid Rousey's grappling and impose a striking on her. And it looks like in my opinion, Rousey's coach didn't do the same thing. Like he actually told her at one point after the first round, "You're doing good," and it was obvious. I mean, you look at the stuff that happened; it was obvious she wasn't doing that well. And he still says after the fact. He actually said after the fact that that he still believes Rousey won in the stand up. And I'm like, well, weren't you there? Like, that's incorrect.
Right. Did you what I want to know is I mean from what I read is that Holly Holm was ranked 7th in the division or something like that. Was that true? Because I mean, like that's a pretty big gap in between both.
Yeah. So one of the things that a lot of people had a problem with was the fact because Miesha Tate's still ranked number 1. Miesha Tate actually, they're it looks like they're calling for her and Holm to fight next, but if obviously they're going to do what sells more tickets. So if for some reason they don't do the rematch with Rousey, it should be Holly Holm versus Miesha Tate because she's ranked number 1 in the UFC, and she was actually promised the next title shot at Ronda Rousey. It was like over a weekend. It was like whatever event happened on a Saturday. The following Monday, Ronda Rousey was on Good Morning America saying she was fighting Holly Holm, and it was even a shock to Miesha Tate. And I mean, obviously that it was a smart move for the UFC to make because they renewed the competition in a division that seemed like it was being cleaned out by Ronda Rousey. People were like, why not give? But Dana White made a really good argument, and I in the post-fight press conference, which I think I put up on Page 2 Sports, he said, everyone that thought I was making a mistake, obviously I didn't, because look what happened. A lot of people didn't want to see a Tate Rousey 3 because Rousey had already beat her twice, so it was like, well, do we want to see her get beat a third time, or do we want to see 2 undefeated fighters fight? I mean, the 2 undefeated fighters makes a sense to me as a selling point, but obviously we'll see what happens next. Nothing's been announced. Most people seem like they want the rematch right away. So, but everybody's waiting to hear from Ronda Rousey. She's been quiet since she's gotten back. So,
do you think that there will be a rematch? Like, I mean, I'm sure that there will be a rematch for sure, but do you think it's going to follow this first bout, or do you think they're both going to fight different people, or Holly Holm's going to face somebody else, and then rematch later if they both win their next bouts, or are they going to just go straight into the rematch?
Well, I mean, the MMA is a real weird sport when it comes to matchmaking, especially lately. Obviously, with what I just talked about, but if it does happen, I think Chris Asbrock, who also writes for Page Two Sports, he might have hit the nail on the head. UFC 200, which is supposed to be in Vegas in July. If it happens, it might happen there. Um, but I know Brian Stan just recently said that Ronda Rousey should fight someone else and then come back after Home, or maybe he was addressing Holly Holm. I forget. I had actually just read that before I left work when we were talking earlier today. So don't quote me on that. You'd have to double check. It was a statement from Brian Stan in reference to which one of these ladies, who they should fight next.
Right.
So but
because I watched that fight, and like, of course, you're a little bit more knowledgeable on the MMA side, um, and everybody said like, oh yeah, she's ranked seventh. Of course, I'm not a hater of Ronda Rousey just because she's popular. Of course, whenever you get to that level of popularity, you're gonna get all the haters come out, because you start winning, you're good, and
yeah,
you go beyond the sport. I thought she backed it up. I mean, she did back it up until a couple weeks ago. But everybody who I talked to, like other people from other websites and other friends who are very into MMA, said that like, yeah, Holly Holm's ranked seventh. She's gonna get demolished. And I'm just like, oh wow, seventh, and that surprised me because I was just like, I mean,
yeah, surprise everybody.
I heard the name Misha Tate, and I assumed like, oh, okay, well they're gonna make that. But I mean, you got to think about it. All combat sports, especially the UFC and all these boxing promotions, they all have to make money. It's a business at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So, of course, like if you put all these mainstream fights one after the other, you're not building kind of any business model behind it. You gotta have to let it stretch out.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. You know what? I it seems like it still happens in boxing. One day for me, I would like to see MMA get to the point where other promotions champions can fight each other to unify titles. Because rather than have several light heavyweight champions, have an undisputed light heavyweight champion. I remember it's actually making me think of the thing. I remember I don't I probably mentioned it to you before when I kind of gave up on boxing was when Lennox Lewis fought which one of the Klitschko's was it? Was it Vladimir Klitschko?
I think it might have been Vitali. Could have been Vitali. Honestly, they're both tall guys. They look the same.
Yeah.
They're both really good. So it was one of the Klitschko brothers.
Yeah, but so whichever Klitschko he fought, Lennox Lewis fought him. He was undisputed. He held all the titles for the heavyweight division, and he was losing. And Klitschko got a cut above his eye, and they stopped the fight. No titles changed hands, and the fight got stopped over technicality. And the next thing you knew, Lennox Lewis retired. And I was like, well, why would you retire? This guy's obviously he was beating you, and they stopped the fight on. Like you need to solidify your win. And he retired. Right. And when he retired, all the belts went all over and up in the air, and kind of ruined boxing for me. And then it just became a whole mess. And I was like, I can't watch this anymore,
Right.
But I mean,
is there anybody right now that because I mean, we, of course, you have mentioned that within the last couple months you've been a little bit more into the sport. Is there anybody right now that catches your eye, boxer wise and stuff like that? Like, oh, I like this guy.
Well, I like Canelo because of the write ups that you did, and on him made me start looking up his older fights and stuff, and I'm like, okay, yeah, this is a boxing that I liked, back in the day. I always liked those guys that fought the way that Arturo Gatti fought, and all these. I was a big fan of Roy Jones Jr. I actually have a picture of him still hanging in my workout room, nice. And so like I like I'm always a fan of finishers, and Triple G I always mispronounce his name. I heard you and Chris Rodriguez mentioning it, but how do you say Triple G's
It's
name?
Gennady Golovkin. His middle name starts with a G as well. That's where the triple G comes.
Yeah,
But honestly, I don't know how to pronounce his middle name. That's why
yeah.
everybody just calls him Gennady Golovkin.
But
But
all
for
all
short,
those
Triple
guys
G.
are catching my eye. And Oscar De La Hoya, I think I tagged you in the tweet when Mayweather said he retired. He was like, "Now it's a time for Golovkin, Canelo, and I forget who the third one was."
But now that you mentioned Oscar De La Hoya, like don't get me wrong, I was a huge De La Hoya fan. I think he's doing a great job as a promoter and stuff. But it's because Mayweather, even though he's technically retired from the sport and he's gone from the sport, like they took him off the pound for pound rankings, the divisional rankings all across the boxing community. Um, Everybody still mentions his name because they know that grabs headlines, which is fine. You know,
Yeah,
he's a huge star. He made his star regardless of how he did it. He made his money. He's you could argue that he's a cultural icon. I'm sure we'll get a lot of hate for that,
yeah,
um, but yeah, he. I remember you tagged me in that tweet where De La Hoya said that. Now it's a new era for Canelo. You know, the new guys, which is fine. You know, I'm completely for that. But I believe just last week, De La Hoya wrote. He wrote a piece for Playboy magazine dissing. It was like a letter dissing Floyd Mayweather, like saying like your fights are boring, you suck, this and that. And it's just like, I mean, I get it. You know, at the end of the day, it's all I guess like publicity, marketing, and stuff like that. It's all a business. I get it. I completely get it. But it's just like, I mean, you're never gonna get the attention off of Mayweather to all these other fighters like Canelo, which is Golden Boy's primary fighter and arguably the most popular fighter in the sport right now, right next to Manny Pacquiao. Um, you're never gonna get the attention off of Mayweather onto your fighters if you keep talking about the guy. You know, like stop
yeah.
mentioning him. Like you're just repeating what everybody else is saying, and you're keeping the attention on him when you want it to be on guys like Canelo, Manny Pacquiao, Cotto, and the guys that are still in the game. You know.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's all. It all boils down to trash talk. The fighters I admire most are the ones that don't say much. I mean, if you look at the sport I cover for MMA, if you look back in the before it got popular, he's actually coming back. Fedor Emelianenko. Um, he was a
You know,
quiet, peaceful, docile man, and people consider him one of the best MMA fighters of lately. You know, and he's coming back. That's why it's a big deal.
is because I remember hearing about him a couple years ago. You know, like Fedor this, Fedor that. Like, oh, if he came in, I believe because I started getting really into MMA like a lot more when Brock Lesnar got in there because like I'm a WWE fan,
Yeah, he brought a
so
lot of fans.
so like when Lesnar made the jump, like he brought a lot of pro wrestling fans. I think that if Lesnar never made that jump, then I mean, I'm sure a lot of pro wrestling fans would have been interested in it and watching it. But just because he made that jump, he brought all the pro wrestlers with him. A lot of those fans who watch pro wrestling stayed hardcore MMA fans, and now they're increasingly into the product. They know it just as much as any other sport because, like, I mean, I still watch it. Like, I mean, of course, you're a little bit more knowledgeable on the product as more than me, but like I said, Lesnar brought me over. I'm waiting for CM Punk's fight because he was a former pro wrestler. I don't know if you could speak on that, but like, have you heard anything on maybe on any potential fights in the future? I know they said in the fall this year, and now they're saying January, February. I mean, do you know
Well,
anything about that?
he got hurt. He got hurt about a month ago. So they were looking at. They're actually looking at December this month coming up, and then now he's hurt. So that's why they pushed it back to fall. Which is, I mean, he's already up there in age. I mean, combat sports, as you know, it's a young man's game. So if you're over 35, your time is limited. Even with the varying ways of finishing someone in MMA. I mean, I know Dan Henderson's over 40 and he's still fighting. He's got one fight left on his contract, and he just lost to Vitor Belfort a couple weeks ago. But I mean, it's just they're not the only two wrestlers that have crossed over into MMA. It's been happening for ages, since the sport's inception. So they're just the most popular ones that have crossed over. I mean, Bobby Lashley just fought in Bellator a couple weeks ago. He's on his third win streak in that promotion. Um,
How do you think he's gonna? I mean, I know he's been in the sport in the MMA sport for a couple of years now, trying to make a name for himself. But do you think that he'll go any higher than what he is now, in your opinion?
well, I mean, he admittedly said this is his like last run at a heavyweight title shot, so he's going for it in Bellator, and I mean he's training in Florida with American Top Team, and every fight he does look better. And there's something. I mean, the man's cardio and conditioning, along with the strength he has for his weight, he's just beastly. The second fight he had, I forget the name of his opponent, but the guy was noticeably heavier than him, and I think I always live tweet the Bellator fights because they're on Friday nights, and I was using the from WWD. I was using the Suplex City hashtag because he was literally lifting this dude up and dropping him, and they stopped the fight because the guy just couldn't take it anymore. He just kept picking him up and dropping him and hitting him, and then when he fought Josh Thompson, who's bigger than him, he did a low single leg takedown on him that Thompson just wasn't ready for, and he hyperextended his knee and finished the fight in the first round. It's like he's actually getting better than he's ever been, and he had lost a decision to Thompson about a couple of years back in the SFL, the promotion that Amir Khan I think is partnered with now.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, it's like an Indian-based promotion, I believe.
Yeah, so they had both fought there, and he lost a decision, but um, it wasn't without hurting Thompson. Like he had broke Thompson's orbital socket, and but they were both really tough guys. It's just that they're both getting up there in age, so I think he's got a chance to do something in Bellator if they let him. But they're also guilty of marketing matches, for viewership and money versus who deserves a shot. So we'll see what
Right.
happens because they in the same division as Kimbo Slice, and I don't know if you heard about the Kimbo Slice is fighting one of those backyard brawler guys in
Right. Yeah, and I
January.
believe he started he started like on YouTube or something, just backyard brawling, like fist fights, like street fights, I believe. And then he just, I guess, he built a following, right? And then like he
Yeah,
got noticed by like MMA promotions.
yeah. They supposedly they both started the same way, and Kimbo just had better marketing. I actually wrote a review on my website for the film that talks about it. It's on Netflix. It's called Dogfight. It's from the
Mm-hmm.
same guys that did Cocaine Cowboys. Um,
Right.
I got a review there, but I mean, you should definitely check it out before that happens, just so you can get some background on both. They're both in the movie, um, but the supposedly, you know, there's fights of him uh, showing him he's better than Kimbo or beating Kimbo, or he makes a lot of claims, but there's no evidence of it. So we'll find out in January, I guess.
Didn't Kimbo just fight? Was it Ken Shamrock not too long ago?
Yeah, yeah, he fought
I mean,
Ken
I know
Shamrock.
that I know that was more of like I guess like a presentation of personalities. Uh, Try to get like the whole, I guess, pro wrestling side. I mean, which is whatever. It's. But I
Yeah.
mean, I can see it in your face just how disappointed you see.
Well, I really just feel like I really wish Ken Shamrock would stop fighting. I mean, the guys that fought when there was no rules in MMA, before it was even called, they didn't call it MMA. They had no name for it. They used to call it NHB or No Holds Barred. Um,
Hmm.
and so those guys, I mean, it's like, what do you have left to prove? I mean, you won tournaments you fought 3-4 times in a night when there was no rules and won. So why are you still trying to fight these dudes now? They have him fighting Hoist Gracie again next year. And it's like, why? They're both old. Like, I don't want to see old guys fight and get hurt. Ken Shamrock,
Right.
Ken Shamrock got knocked out. I mean, thank God John McCarthy was there to jump in. Why he didn't finish the choke on Kimbo Slice in that fight, I don't know. I write it off to dementia or whatever you want to call it. I don't want to insult the guy, But
Right.
it's
Right.
just like you can't tell these guys when to stop fighting. They know when they want to stop. But I really wish he would stop. I mean, he's got nothing left to prove. Everybody knows who Ken Shamrock is.
Right.
You know.
And I guess we could look into this week. I believe you guys got fight night, fight pass on this Saturday, right? Henderson and
Yeah, it's gonna be on like at 8 a.m. I think in my time. I'm not gonna be up to watch it. It's Thanksgiving weekend. It's in Korea.
yeah,
It's on Fight Pass. Yeah, Henderson and um I don't I don't have the card. I actually wrote down the last week's card because I was going to talk about since we were talking about our heritage because you know the
I think
UFC
it's
was
is it Masvidal?
George Mas
Masvidal?
yeah George Masvidal yeah
Masvidal, yeah.
yeah I mean Henderson he's happy to be fighting so he wasn't really finishing anybody and it seemed like he was getting some flack from that from the promotion so I think that's why he's wound up on Fight Pass. But Fight Pass seems like a better bang for your buck these days because it's not
Right.
just UFC. They show Invicta there. They picked up Pancrase, Legacy FC. So a lot of the stuff you see me complaining about in on our virtual office, we're like, hey, you guys have this channel to watch these.
Mm-hmm.
Now UFC is picking them up. Dana White was actually just here in Jersey this past weekend at Ring of Combat 53 recruiting fighters for his it's featured on his little web show. I forget what it's called, but that's where they got Sage Northcutt from, and hopefully he's picking up a few new fighters from Jersey because there's a lot of there's a lot of talent here on the East Coast, even though the weather's
Right.
nicer where you are.
I'm telling you, man, you got to come towards LA.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's something to be said. I mean, that's why so many things happen near you. I really do think that nicer weather, fighters just like fighting in nicer weather.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, you guys got better seasons. Just one, the good one.
I know, right? Yeah, man, you got to. What else? I knew I was going to ask you something. Okay, I just forgot. Oh, that's what
So
it was. What's the deal with Kurt Angle and Bellator? That I heard about that a couple months ago. What they announced it. Is it more of like this a marketing thing where he's just kind of there to be an image,
it has
or
to
is he going to
be.
get it right? Because I mean,
Yeah.
the guy's older. I don't want to see him get in the ring, to get in
No,
the cage or anything. Like,
no. I mean, he's good. His wrestling ability. I'm pretty sure he could out wrestle even the most competitive wrestlers now, or at least survive with him. But he's got so many. The thing about pro wrestling, and actually on my podcast, I had a pro wrestler on, a local guy named he just got the Pro Wrestling Syndicate title. Actually, I found out this past weekend, Matt McIntosh, and we talked about it. We talked about CM Punk and just how people doubt pro wrestlers. I mean, yes, what they do is fake and it's predetermined, but the things they put their body through toughens them. So when they come into an actual combat situation, they might get suffocated or overwhelmed. But I mean, if to think that they're going to actually, they can get knocked out, sure. But if you're not finishing them, they're going to take a lot of pain before they decide to tap out or submit. I mean, there's guys that have had their eyes popped out of their head in pro wrestling matches and finished the match, So, um, but he's up there in age, and I know he's torn his abdominal muscles. I used to know his laundry list. I always looked up their injuries, like CM Punk's injuries. I'm always like, why are you trying to come into MMA? It's you should have tried when you were younger. But I don't think he's going to do anything.
yeah, I didn't think so either. But now that you mentioned, like, oh, when you should try when you were younger, uh, going back to the pro wrestling, I remember they asked. I don't know if you remember, but when Lesnar lost to it might have. I don't know if it was his last fight. It might have been the last fight, but 2010 or something. But did you ever see the video interview with Ariel Hawani, who when he interviewed the Undertaker at ringside, and he asked Undertaker if he was like younger and MMA was as big as it is now, would he have made the jump? And Undertaker pretty much said like he would have if it was as popular as it is now. he probably wouldn't have stayed in pro wrestling. He probably would have made the jump and went to MMA, which I mean speaks volumes because a lot of pro wrestlers are huge MMA fans. Like
Yeah.
Stone Cold, Steve Austin, Undertaker, of course Lesnar's still a fan, CM Punk and stuff like that. You know.
And there's more, like I said, you can go through the list of guys that have actually fought and gone back. There's people that people don't even know about, like Albert Del Rio fought in Japan in MMA. He fought under the name Dos Caras. He actually wore a pro wrestling mask on his face, but it was like it was cut out so that it only framed his nose and his cheeks. He fought
Right.
Crow Cop there and got knocked out by Crow Cop, but
Man.
he still fought there. And I only found out that was him like a year ago. I was like, oh wow, that was Albert Del Rio. But and I think he does a commentary now for Combate America on NBC Universal. So I mean, a lot of pro wrestlers are involved with the sport more than you think. But and like Kazushi Sakuraba, Josh Barnett, those are guys that cross the line in New Japan Pro Wrestling. They wrestle there still, and then they still fight in MMA. So it happens more often than they think. So people shouldn't give. I don't think people should give CM Punk all the hate they give him. When I was in Vegas, people weren't nice to him, and I was kind of like, "That's messed up, man." And even Brian Stan stuck up for him. Some guy made a comment. Brian Stan was like, "Hey, that guy's been through more, put his body through more pain than you or I could ever know about," or something along those lines.
Do you think that? I mean, of course, you have to commend him for even agreeing or wanting to get in the cage after having pretty much no experience. I mean, I know he's really close friends with the Gracie family. So he said that he's like rolled around with them, you know, done a couple. So he's like he does jujitsu and stuff like that. But like realistically, do you think that he can make a mark? And I mean, I'm sure they're going to put him with like a kind of maybe a no name guy. His first match, I mean, of course they're not going to throw him in with the Wolves. But do you think that after pretty much a year and a half of training, do you think he could survive and sustain a career?
I mean, he's already 40, 41. So I don't see a lengthy career for him, no matter how good he gets, or just because his body's going to let him know at some point that it's too much. But I know they're going to put him in with a 0-0 guy or 0-1 guy or 1-1 guy. That's what they said. And I do wish he picked another camp to train in, because he's training over at Rufus Sport. And one of the other websites I used to write for, there was a guy that did an analysis on the American MMA camps, and he kind of like racked up the most injured, like who gets hurt the most from which camp, and that camp came up as the highest injured fighter camp.
Oh wow!
So it's like, why did you pick of all places? Why did you pick that place? Like he had a lot of people inviting him in. About Bobby Lashley actually invited him to American Top Team, and I was kind of hoping he'd go there, because it's like, okay, somebody can help you transition, from pro wrestling into fighting, but he didn't take that offer.
I think because where's Rufus Sport at? Where exactly is it at? What city?
I forget. It slips my mind now, because it's late for me, so my mind's already kind of shutting down. But I think the reason he went to Rufus Sport, my location definitely had something to do with it. But when they made the announcement, Ben Askren was his biggest detractor. Ben Askren's undefeated. He was a Bellator champion, left Bellator. He now fights at ONE FC, and he's undefeated. And when he left Bellator, he thought the UFC was going to come calling, and they didn't. So his comment on Twitter was, hire a fake wrestler with no fights, but ignore the real wrestler that's undefeated. And I think that's kind of why, like, he went there to it was like a humbling experience, but kind of to prove to Ben Askren, like, I'm serious about this too. So if you think I'm so bad, then why don't you show me what's the right way to do this?
What's your opinion on that, though? Like, because I mean, I'm sure people know who are familiar with the whole CM Punk situation, is that he left the WWE on pretty rocky terms. He just quit right on the bat. I believe it was in January of 2014. Then he went on He did a podcast earlier this year, and it was just all bullets and bullets from both sides, But the reason why why he said he left is, of course, he wasn't being treated fairly, and then he was kind of frustrated that, he was one of the biggest stars there, but he was kind of frustrated that he didn't main event their biggest pay-per-view of the year, WrestleMania. They brought in Lesnar and The Rock, and they gave them pretty much all the main events, all the spotlight. He was kind of pretty much mad about that. Which I get it. You're on the road 300 plus days a year, and you're the one putting in all the hard work and everything. And some other guys come in and they pretty much get shot to the top. The Rock and Lesnar are just huge stars, so it's all a business, like we mentioned, marketing. Yeah. But if you look at it, he kind of did the same thing with UFC. He kind of used his popularity and his image with his fan base to kind of get in the same position. And now he's going to pretty much be shot to. Of course, he's not going to be thrown in there with the big guys, but I would want to know your opinion on that whole situation.
Well, first of all, when Ben Askren said what he said, I agreed with him, because I was like, that's messed up. That is messed up. But when the same question is posed to CM Punk, Phil Brooks, call him by his name, Phil Brooks.
It's Phil Brooks.
His answer, you can't argue his response, which is, I'm in a position where they can offer something like this to me, and point out to me someone that would say no. If you've always daydreamed about MMA, if you ever had an aspiration to do it, and now you have an opportunity to fight one fight in the biggest promotion in the world, would you say no? And when I train, I'm about his age, and I train, and I used to want to be a fighter when I was in my 20s. I'm about his age now. If they offered me the fight, I would think I'd say, you're going to pay me to train and fight one time? Absolutely. So I can't fault him for the decision he makes. And I think his response to everybody that tries to knock him is great. So I'm looking forward to seeing him fight. And I respect his efforts and the way he motivates himself to train. Even with an injury, obviously he got injured, but he obviously has a good work ethic. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, man. So we got the sports are pretty much alive and well. They're pretty consistent. We're one of the few sports who don't have any off seasons. We usually always have something going on, which is good for us.
Yeah, man. Last weekend was crazy. You had the Canelo. You were there at Vegas covering the boxing, and then the Friday before was Bellator 146. And then the World Series of Fighting had their 8-man tournament, which was crazy because the guy that was out first that lost wound up getting called back in because someone else got hurt, and then wound up going through the whole tournament and winning the whole thing. So right. That's Brian Foster. Now he's going to fight Justin Gaethje in the World Series of Fighting once he heals up from fighting 3 times in a night. And then the following Saturday, UFC in Mexico in Monterrey, Diego Sanchez came back and he lost, but I've never been more impressed by someone that lost a fight than watching his fight. I love watching that guy fight. He's getting up there in age too, but I don't see him retiring soon the way he fought on Saturday. So yeah, man, combat sports is definitely something that keeps us busy. We're lucky if we get a weekend off.
I know, right? We really are. But we got a couple fights coming up. I do want to mention that not only do you have the UFC Fight Pass this Saturday, but also this Saturday there's a heavyweight boxing match in Germany between the heavyweight champion of the last 10 years, Vladimir Klitschko, facing off against undefeated, I believe he's 24-0. His name's Tyson Fury.
Oh yeah.
Tyson Fury is 6'9". Klitschko is 6'6", 6'7". So they're both huge guys. But Klitschko's been dominating the sport in his division for the better part of 10 years.
Wow. So you think it's time, or who do you think takes that?
Honestly, I don't know. everybody, of course, the heavyweight division isn't as popular as it was when Tyson, Lennox Lewis, all that stuff was there. Um, but it's because like Klitschko has been so good in his career. Yes, he has a couple losses, but he got those like in the early 2000s, and literally for the last like 10 years since like 2005, 2006, he's like found that niche where he's just like, all right, I'm gonna just dominate everybody, and he just dominates everybody, like, which is like, I get it, like you everybody fights him, and everybody's like, oh, the Klitschko's gonna win easily, but I mean, they're saying that Tyson Fury has a good shot, like he's if you watch the debut press conference from a couple of months ago when they announced the fight, the guy showed up in a Batman suit. Like he's a lunatic, man. But I
Yeah.
mean, hey, hey, you got to entertain the fans too. But
Yeah.
like, I'm pretty excited for that fight. I mean, I do pick Klitschko to win just because he's been there before. He has the experience. But I mean, if you see Tyson Fury get the win, especially if he beats him in like knockout fashion, then you got a brand new heavyweight division. It's all open for the top spot.
Yeah. That's what makes the fight game fun, man. I mean, you never know. One punch, one lucky punch could change a whole division and make fights for months. I mean, that's what's happening with the women's bantamweight division with Rousey's loss. I mean, everyone's looking at what's next for Holly Holm, and that could potentially happen for Klitschko on Saturday, potentially. But I don't know. I'm picking Klitschko to win just because, like I said, he's a name I know. But I actually, when you mentioned Tyson Fury, when did he last fought? Like in the summer, right?
I believe so. Yeah, but
I
like,
think,
yeah, he won that one too. I mean,
yeah,
he's a monster, man. He's a
yeah, he
monster.
is. He's a huge dude. I saw that fight. Um, but yeah, I actually meant to ask you about that. I'm glad you brought it up. So yeah, man, lots of fights of Thanksgiving weekend. I feel bad for these guys because they all got to make weight and
I know,
uh,
right? Especially during this week. Like, oh, it sucks.
yeah. So how do you make weight during this time of year? I guess if you're out of the country, it helps because not everybody celebrates Thanksgiving.
Yeah, it's a
But
little easier.
yeah, it's a little easier to keep food out of your plate. But all right, man. So I guess we'll talk in our virtual office during the week and keep in touch. But I'm really glad you made time to do this. Um, it's going to be on my podcast, and then for those people that are listening, let us know what you like, what you don't like. Comment, please, and because me and Daniel are trying to get our own thing together for future combat sports discussion. So
Definitely,
thanks
yeah.
thanks again, man, for coming on. I know it was dinner time for you over there in Cali.
A little bit, yeah. So just past 7 o'clock over here, but I know you're three
Man, it's
hours
bad.
ahead over there in
Yeah,
New
it's
Jersey.
bedtime for
So
me.
I know,
So
right?
that's what makes it rough. I'm always complaining on my podcast about not being able to get guests, but I know you've always been down, and I got a couple of others lined up. But when we get our own thing going, at least if we don't have a guest, at least we'll be able to talk about boxing and MMA. I mean, it's a good talk, man. I'm actually, like I said, if it wasn't for your writing, I don't think I'd be getting back into boxing as much as I have, and I think PBC is actually doing a really good job of bringing back fans too.
Yeah,
Who did
they're,
that's Tarver and the Golden Boy, right?
what do you mean? Like who runs PBC?
Yeah.
No, it's I don't know if you know who Al Heyman is, but Al Heyman is he says he's not a promoter, but he is a promoter. But like
Uh,
he's one he's one of those guys who does not like to be seen in the public eye. He likes to do everything behind the scenes.
Smart
But
man.
he's promoted guys like Floyd Mayweather. Like if you notice, Mayweather always thanks Al Heyman, like, and he
Yeah.
speaks highly of him because Heyman is the one who gets his fighters paid all this money. So that's pretty much how he gets the reputation he has. He's like, look, like everybody sees Al Heyman, like, okay, if I get managed by Al Heyman, I know I'm going to get paid. So he's the one who's pretty much in charge of the whole PBC network right now, which is good. I mean, I have no problem with it because it gives more exposure to the sport, more competition. Like it lets all these promotions compete with each other and put out the best fights they can. But you're right though, like TBC. I know some people complain about like, oh yeah, I don't know these guys, why are they fighting? But it's giving these people exposure on these national networks, which is good for the sport and good for the fighters.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, man. Definitely brought me back, but you had something to do with that too when you first came on to Page Two Sports. So, all right, man. So before we close up, just let the people know where they can find your stuff and follow you at.
You got it, man. Yeah. So I'm a boxing writer and reporter for page2sports.com. So like you said, me and you, we run the whole combat sports section, MMA and boxing. You can find all my stuff there. You can find your stuff there as well. I also have a YouTube channel where I upload all things boxing, news, analysis, training sessions, press conferences, interviews with people within the sport of boxing. It's under my name, Daniel Zaldivar, Zald like dog, Ivar. It should be in a couple of my pieces from my videos. So if you just click those, it'll take you straight to my YouTube channel. But yeah, I mean, you can follow me on Twitter at DZ _online. And yeah, I appreciate you having me on. I'm glad we finally got the chance to do it, man, because we've been talking about this for months, and the whole time difference, and we kind of have to schedule it. But like, if we can keep doing this weekly, especially if all these listeners, they like what we're talking about and they enjoy it, then hey, man, it keeps us busy and it keeps us doing what we love,
Yes, sir. All right, man. Oh, well, I'm gonna sign off now. Stop the broadcast, and then I'll let you know when the numbers come in.
Sounds good, man. I'll talk to you in the virtual office we had, like you said.
All right, man. Take care.
All right, you got it.